Okay.
I don't forget.
Okay. As always, it's a bit misleading because the title should be including all the people that involved, including Seb that I saw here, Sebastian Joannin, and many others. So any time that you lead such a project, you write your name and then you say, if I would put everyone, it will be a bit skewing the order of the PowerPoint of the organizer. So I apologize on that I didn't include everyone. It would just be 25 people in the game. So I'm apologizing for all those 24, including Helen that is here and so on. First, this is one misleading thing that I need to start with. And the second one is that my co-PI is Boris Gasparian, and without his support, help, effort, and push, all this could not be happening. So it's really important to put things in context. As a guest in Armenia, although I'm there 3 or 4 times a year, I'm still a guest. But it's my second home, especially when I was living in Germany for 5.5 years. To go to Armenia was always feeling that I'm coming to my family. So without any more delays, I will start with the science. So where we are, and just everyone here knows where we are. So currently I'm here more or less in the, where you see my mouse? Okay, so we will fly a bit over Syria and Lebanon and Turkey, and we will get into the Armenian highlands. And our box that we are working on, if you want, the geographical box, and every person that lives in this area of the world of Southwest Asia, whatever you want to call it, any name that I will give will have someone that will be insulted from it. If I say Levant, it will be insulting. If I will say whatever. So I'm apologizing in advance for everyone. But what I will talk about today is the work that we are doing in Armenia. For the past 7 years that I'm in Armenia, first of all, on the shoulders of giant of the projects that Dan Adler led in Armenia and leading in Armenia. And I'm continuing his legacy in a way in Armenia, and our project is a continuation of his project. So the area that we are dealing with is very challenging if you are a hunter-gatherers. First of all, the terrain is not a simple terrain. The differences in elevations between the depression of the Kura Arax and the Ara depression, and on the other side you have a variation, a huge amount of variation of different geological and geographical point of view. You don't need to look much at the figures here beyond the fact that the color is already telling you how crazy the geology is, first of all. And second of all, you can see that it's very active tectonic, and what is available for us as a Paleolithic archaeologist to study is already biased, skewed, if you want, by the geomorphology and what is left for us to study. So if you are searching for another Tbilisi, unfortunately, half of the area that we working on is covered by volcanic activities that are removed the landscape that people of Tbilisi saw when they were walking into Tbilisi. So this is one caveat that we think about and we need to think about. On the other hand, it's creating a lot of opportunities, and this is will be discussed later. Another thing that is important, that this more or less black line also have an important implications in regards to the watershed. If you are ever drove through the channel from Yerevan to Ichivan on the way to Tbilisi, and you cross the tunnel, you got from semi-arid to the alpine meadows in 4 kilometers. And this is a part of the magic of this area, that the changes of microhabitat are starking and in a short distance. Same goes here. Don't look at anything beyond the colors, because the colors are giving you the different vegetation and the different type of vegetation. And already what you can see here, it's very diverse, and it's diverse over very short distances. And in contrast to this diversity that you saw before, that you can see over here, that area here, this is the area that 90% of the middle and upper Paleolithic of Georgia are located in this 10 kilometers square. But you see the diversity that we have all around. The same goes with Armenia, that most of the research was done around Yerevan. And if you see the concentration, this is what I meant before, you see that unlike the diversity that we saw before in regards to geology, in regards to the current vegetation belts, etc., our research agendas until now were more or less concentrated on those regions. And as a result, we had a bit skewed pictures. And our project, in a way, started already 6 years ago in Calavan here, over here, to continue a previous excavation by the French mission to go to a new area, to do something else, and to do it in an open air context in Calavan. And then we will later discuss, we went to the south part, to the lower elevation of the Ararat Depression. And this is more or less, I will explain the logic behind the entire project in our aim to, in a way, be a hunter-gatherer, to follow the step of a hunter-gatherer and follow the decision-making of a hunter-gatherer. And I will start by presenting the two case studies that were the foundation for the project that we are gonna start. We started this year, but we are starting from a jumping point of 2 jumping points, and I will describe them shortly here. So this is the joy of archaeological dig. We have here in situ Sebastian working, and Vincent Olivier together with us, and Phil Glauberman. And we had a huge team that worked with us in this project. You have Tobias, Laura, and so on, so on. I will not mention all the names, as I said before, it will take too long. In this project, we started in 2017. You can see it over here. This is more or less a high elevation, and this is a question that I hope that you will ask me in the end. What is high elevation in a country where 90% of it is above 2,000, above 1,000? Sorry. So what is high elevation when you are talking about high elevation? So I hope that you will ask me in the end. I'm just leading you for this question. So Calavan 2 is over here. You can see the terrain in which we are working in. We are in a junction, in a point of meeting point of a large river of the Barapat River, and a small tributary that's called Dani, after the dog of the Rubos family. And this site was excavated, as I said before, and published by Guskemian et al. In 2011. It was part of the French mission, and we came back in order to have a better chronostratigraphical resolution and enlarge it spatially. And the preliminary result of it published last year in +1, if you are interested in the details. As I said before, we started by following the steps of the French and the Armenian team before, and we had trench 1, 2, 3, and we opened a new trench in trench 4. And within these 4 trenches, we are dealing with the archaeology that is mainly found in trench 1 and trench 2. Trench 4 was very interesting, but it's interesting for paleo-environmental reasons, and I will describe it later. Trench 1, 2, and 3 are related to the meeting points of the 2 rivers. We have the floodplain of the 2 of them, while in trench 4, we have a succession of paleo soils. Lithic-wise, what we have mainly obsidian. We have other 6 raw materials that you can see that all of them do the same thing, more or less, creating pointed pieces that are typical to the late Middle Paleolithic in the Levant and in Armenia. But in Armenia, they are retouched. In the Levant, they are done technologically with the Levallois. And the interesting thing is that there is variation in raw material, but the obsidian is highly used, and the other materials are less retouched and show slightly different technological organization than the obsidian. The obsidian is nice in a way because you can see the entire reduction sequence of pieces that already brought to the site napped. And I will go in a minute to the work of Ellery from Yale University that do the PXRF and do the resource of the obsidian. The obsidian is not local, and it's the closest source is coming 30 to 40 kilometers away from the site. Just to go a bit to archaeology, like the lithic, I'm a specialist in lithic, so it's for me to reserve myself to 3 slides on lithics is really difficult. So I will do my best not to delve into the details, but just to explain a bit the logic of what is unique of the site. You have the starting point, you have a rejuvenation of a large point until that it's discarded in 2 centimeters. And you have the entire stages of use until discard. And this is when you compare it to the non-obsidian that we have the first stages. We have the cores, we have all the reduction sequence, not only the last phases of usage, retouch, and maintenance that you see in the obsidian. And this is really interesting, the differences. And we will go into when we will talk about the ERC and what we are trying to do, we're trying to understand the decision-making behind this peculiar kind of behavior. This is, again, the work of Ellery that shows the distance of raw material. And the interesting thing is that most of it is coming from Gutanosar and Hattis that are on the other side of Lake Sevan, on the dry side of Lake Sevan, because we are here in the forest. And Gutanosar and Hattis are around 40 to 50 kilometers if you are a bird, but if you are a human, most likely you walked, and it's most likely like 70 kilometers if you do if you follow the topography. You have further sources that are going up to 120, and we have even sources that goes to 160 in a straight line. And we have, and the interesting thing is that we have even sources that are common to middle and upper Paleolithic sites in Georgia that we discussed before. Here you can see the distances in the map. Just to, if you are a Levantine like me, the distance of 160 kilometers, if you are in Tel Aviv and you take your car, you cross Israel to Jordan, you cross Amman, and then you go to the desert. This is more or less distance. So you cross in Israel 3 different biomes in this distance. In here, you crossed even more, of course, as we saw before in the vegetation bed. The nice thing is that it's until now, unfortunately, Calavan 2 is the only site, open air site, that in the Middle Paleolithics that have fauna. And it's nice because it's providing us another glimpse on the decision making. We have high frequency, relatively high frequency of boss bison. It's hard to know when it's a piece of bone if you don't have the horns. We have ors and onager, few bones from red deer, and we have 1 or 2 caprine. And it's really interesting because you can see here some sort of an ecotone, because you have the mosaic one in mosaic environment of an open and swampy that represented by the boss bison, and you have a more open one, horse onager, and then you have the rocky one with the caprine. So it's really interesting where we are sitting in, and the fact that you see all this variation. Another interesting issue is what was brought to the site, because we don't see in our excavation the not meaty part. So we don't see the heads, we don't see the preliminary butchery place or the hunting place. We see the places where they brought the steaks to eat. So, and we can see on the bones themselves, here you can see the percussion marks that they open the bone in order to eat the marrow, because the marrow is really good. And you can see even signs of cutting the bones in order to get to the meat. And of course, this is a mistake. So we have few of bones of few cut marks. I will put here as a hook, because we will talk about it in later parts. The interesting thing is the microfauna assemblages, and I'm saying it again as a lithic specialist. The nice thing is that you can have different, you see from the taphonomical point of view that the one in the succession of the palosoils are died in their burrows. We see the entire body, and we see that they died most likely in the winter, because we see the size of them and the age. While the ones that are found in the archaeological material, or where the archaeology is, the few of them had the digestion marks, that they were swollen and spitted by the owls. The nice thing is that they also, most of them that was found in the burrow are representing some sort of steppe and grassland environment. So it's another indication of environment that is really interesting. So if we summarize thus far what we have a high elevation site that sits next to a river of people that come to this place, and we don't know when, but we assume, given the current weather in Calavan today, most likely in a certain periods of the year, most likely in the summer, or in the more nicer periods of summer, spring, something like that, when it's not really cold in the winter. And we have at least 3 middle Paleolithic layers that are dated between 60 to 45,000 years ago, according to the OSL Ages of Tobias lore. And the layers are really thin, and we have already indication of refitting of lithic artifact to each other, suggesting that they didn't move much, and they most likely reflect the original place of their deposition. According to the raw material exploitation, we can talk about the exploitation territory that is, as I showed before by the picture from Ellery, it's really huge. It's a vast area was used. And we talked about the ephemerality of the occupation, as we can see it from the lithic material and the fauna. We talked about the diverse ecotones. When we were in Calavan, we always thought, okay, it's nice to have one point in the landscape, and we are testing the idea that we are seeing some sort of up-down movement or elevation gradient, a mobility pattern. But if this is our idea, that we have a site that is reflecting a short occupation during certain time of the year, we need to go to the other side, to the lower elevation, and lower elevation, of course, relatively to Calavan. So we thought where we can go to continue this journey. Already in Georgia, Dan Adler and Guy Bar-Oz showed such a movement already in the middle and the upper Paleolithic occurring, that people scheduled their occupation in the cave according to the availability of the animals that migrate. And we thought, okay, we need to do the same, following the phrase of Michelle Obama, when they go, or opposite to Michelle Obama, when they go high, we go low. And we went to the depression, we searched for the site in the lower available area of the Ararat depression. The logic was that we will go there. It's one of the areas that we can find sedimentary rocks. We hoped for karstic caves, and we hope to have a nice area that we thought that will be next to the Paleo Lake of the Ararat depression that was suggested in the literature that there was here a lake. People like lakes, they like caves. We thought, okay, this is an area that we want to pursue. Luckily, we got from the Fritz Thyssen Stiftung support for this idea. And we started the project already in 2018. And I will present you some of the preliminary results. The project also funded the postdoc of Theo Karampoulos, that is a geomorphologist, that the aim was to study or to map, to do a detailed geomorphological map of the area that we work on in order to contextualize archaeology or to even understand where we need to go to search for archaeology that fits the time period that we are interested in. And the other side that we worked on and we focused on, and we did this one season in 2019, and we hope to continue in the summer, is Ararat 1 cave that you can see over here where it's located. This is a depression when you look down, and you can have a picture. This is the scenery from the cave. Not so bad. I can tell you it's really one of the best sites that I ever excavated in terms of scenery. As you can see, it's also good for your physical mobility to go up and down 3 or 4 times a day. It's doing good for the body. And here is a map that they'll provide for us of the different floodplain or alluvial fence that goes from the ridge of the ridge on top of the cave until we have the floodplain of the Arax River. Here is the location of the cave and in relation to the depression. The cave, we excavated 2 meter deep sequence. You have here the different phases of occupations. The cave depositional mechanisms that accumulated in the cave were aeolian deposit and the falling of the roof. Sorry. So this kind of a combination of a roof fall that blocks the sand that brought to the cave, or the wind-blown material that brought to the cave, in a way preserved the cave from being eroded into the depression. And here is an example. You see here a block that falls down. You can see that beneath the block, we have lithic artifacts, that some of them are refitted to each other. And when you remove the block, you see there is more bones and fauna remains below it. So more or less, the roof fall blocking the sediments from being washed down into the valley. Interestingly enough, the lithic assemblage of the site really resemble the Calavan assemblage. Again, it's I will go back. The accumulation starts at around 50,000 and ending up in 33, 35. Everything in the site is Middle Paleolithic. There are a few ceramics that percolated down from the Chalcolithic period until the Middle Ages. We had a few C14 ages of that suggested some intrusion into the layers, but more or less from the lithic artifact, we have only Middle Paleolithic, and most of them are coming in these 2 layers, the 2C and 2D. The lithic assemblage, as we said before, is containing 2 main component or raw materials. One is obsidian that is usually heavily retouched, and the other one is flint artifacts. These pictures were done by Boris Gasparnian and Dimitri Arklan. And this kind of dual technological organization reminds us, or very resembling the one from Calavan. And you can see that by the composition of the lithic artifact, The obsidian, when you regard it from the pieces that are larger than 2 centimeters, it's always 36%. It's very high, while in the flint component, it's relatively low, around 5–6%. Also, the degree of retouch is very, very different between the two. And most of the flakes or the small fragments of the obsidian coming from the retouch. And as you can see here, majority of the artifact coming from layer 2C, and there are changes in the relative frequencies of flint versus obsidian throughout the sequence. Again, Ellery zapped all the material, and we have more or less same raw material sources that we saw on the other side of the lake in Kalavan. You have the Gutana Sarenhatis as the most dominant, together with Gegasar, and as well we have Sevkar that was used also in Kalavan, Arteni, and even sources that are deep inside of Turkey, 180 kilometers away. Similar pictures that we saw in Kalavan of around 200 kilometers radius around the site of exploitation area. We cannot see yet, and this is something that we will need to test, what is the effect on the obsidian. Are the further away obsidian are more retouched than the ones that are closer? This is things that we need to do in the future. Again, the same things that we showed you before, I showed you before in Kalavan. Luckily, in Ararat, we have a really well preservation of charcoals, of seeds, of phytoliths, so the ability to conduct environmental study are more friendly to the archaeologists. This work was done by Paloma Vidal, that mainly showed that the buckstone is the one that is more representative, while the other ones are representing some sort of semi-arid environment, similar to what you see today, but it's nice that we have more support for what we see. This is the botanical remains that were found. It's mainly gallium, and interestingly enough, we have also the poo of a hyena that shows that was found in one of the layers that was less occupied by humans. Of course, humans and hyenas don't live together at the same time. And as I mentioned before, the microfauna is really, really interesting in this respect, because we have a very large assemblage, but the assemblage is dominated by semi-arid rodents, gerbil, and so on and so on. It's really, really interesting to see the differences in the environment of the microfauna when you compared it between this and the Kalavan too. And we have a large collection of amphibian, of herpetofauna that also shows this diversity of semi-arid environments. So just to summarize, we have a potential for a really nice site to have a high resolution site of including environmental data. That's similar to the case of Kalavan. We have ephemeral occupation, and we have a very interesting kind of point of view of a play between humans and carnivores in the sequence. And we can see that the majority of the occupation was happening in the site between 45 to 35, again, Middle Paleolithic. And these two sites were the base, as I said before, for our ERC proposal. I'm emphasizing, we have 8 field seasons in the ERC. So in the summer, we will have 2 more seasons. And of course, everything that I'm saying now is with a question mark for today and this time of the day. And the idea of the ERC was to take the same kind of approach that trying to test the microhabitats or to follow the microhabitats and the topography as our guiding for the structure of the ERC. And we are talking about behavioral package. Then we have the environmental reconstruction. We have a study on the rodents and the herpetofauna, and I will go a bit into details about it. And of course, as I said before, we will not be able to do this ERC without previous help from all the other funding agencies. As we discussed before with Berger, that the ERC allows you to do the basic things that you are never allowed in a cutting edge. So, and what I will describe now is what we can do or what we would like to do in the next 5 years. So the basic question was, we have a current picture of our understanding of the Middle Paleolithic and Upper Paleolithic in the region is mainly that we have few sites in the MIS7, in the interglacial, another 2 sites that are in the other interglacial of MIS5, and most of our sites are in MIS3. And the question is if this punctuated occupation in the region is dictated by climate, by the climatic oscillations. And this is, we are going back to the Bible of climatic changes in the region, and it's the Lake Van paleoclimatic record. And this is, for example, the Stockhecke paper from 2014 that's showing changes between glacial and interglacial. And what they are describing in a way is a change from an open steppe with less recovers during the colder condition, while during interglacial, an open steppe temperate forest. This is nice, but how it relates to decision-making of people. And to add into this mix, there is a big group working in Armenia on the LESS project by Daniel Wolf and Marcus Fuchs and other many people. And they working on the LESS sequence. And here you can see the oscillation that they described. And Daniel and his group, more or less, in the paper by Richter, suggested that the changes that you see between glacial and interglacial are the ones that changing the tree line. And this is more or less the major ecological changes that occurs through the climatic oscillation. Stockhecke in 2016 in her model suggested that the distribution of the rainfall is the most important thing, and the changes is between glacial is that the winter are longer while the summer droughts are more frequent, while interglacial, the increase in spring and early summer. So what is all this can tell us about the past decision making? And here I'm just showing you the average January temperature today in Armenia, and think about hunter-gatherer 50, 60,000 years ago, or if you want the last glacial maximum. And today you see the average temperature are fluctuating according to the elevation. And in many of the areas in Armenia today, if you would be a hunter-gatherer, you prefer not to be there in the winter because it's really cold. Not to say in the past when the temperature even more were more extreme than today. As you can see also, there is a nice correlation between the temperature and the precipitation. And if we were talking about Ararat over here and Kalavan over here, you see that they complement each other in a way. And the same kind of a logic leads us to the next question, how people manage these changes in research availability throughout the year, how it affected their mobility strategies, how it affected their settlement pattern. And this is our, if you ask me, this is the most interesting question in the project, is to deal with this kind of challenge or to try to deal with this challenge. What we have here is the transect between the Kura, more or less, depression to the Ararat depression on the other side. And this is, if you see the section between the two, and here you can see the 160 kilometers. It's like Chekhov, what appears in Ellery's figure as 160 as a kilometers. It's the same one that you see between here and here. And what you have here, you can see the fluctuation in elevation. Calavan is more or less here, and Ararat is over here at 1,000. And as we talked before, of course, it's elevation is a relative thing. And as we talked before, here is more or less the line of the watershed between the more arid and less arid today. And how all these factors play into the decision-making of hunter-gatherer, how they structure their settlement patterns, mobility, and so on. This is what we are interested. And if you want to be very speculative, and I will not publish it, I can say it in the lecture, and I cannot put my head under the guillotine with this kind of thing over a review, we can suggest that in Calavan 2, for example, it's an open air, spring, summer, autumn, some kind of a seasonal task-specific site, while we are searching for those sites that are winter camp, so longer duration of occupation, and Ararat one is not fitting to this model, of course. As always, we are building a model that is not fit. But this is what we are trying to test, and this is where we are continuing with the ERC to test this kind of a model. And it's important also to say that in what we enabled us until now to show that even in more or less paleo-contemporaneous of more or less the same time, between 60 to 35, between two sites in the same time, we see the ecological niches have more influence than the climatic fluctuation. We see a stability, for example, in the semi-arid condition in Ararat 1. The same goes, we see the stability in Calavan 2. So the topography has a large influence on the climatic reconstruction that whatever we will be doing in the end. Just to show you that we are comparing the two niches, this is the Calavan 2 and the Ararat, just to have two starking changes. And you see the topography and the ruggedness between the two of them already, I think, clear for the eye. And as I said in the beginning, the TransCause, our project, in a way, help us to build, to move back to Jerusalem, to the Hebrew U, and to build a lab. And we have a new lab manager that facilitate all the work here. And I will start now going into the details of the work packages or the thing that we are trying to do. We are targeting more surveys and more excavation in the region. As I said, we have 8 seasons. And we have a student, David Nora, that is conducting the analysis of the lithic artifacts from the site that we excavate. And Delphine Vitesse is analyzing the fauna. And we have the same team that we had before with Ellery continuing with the sourcing. And we are hoping to enlarge in this direction. As I told you before, one of the questions that we're dealing with is why people choose certain raw material and how it affects their decision making. And David, in his study, is trying to understand the mechanical properties of the different raw material, and he took 4 raw material similar to the ones that we have on the site: obsidian, dacite, flint, and quartzite, and trying to see how a same movement with the same power affect their active edge and its usability and durability. And he was working in Monrepo, my previous place of work. And here you have a short movie of how it's done. You can see the artifact is done, it's put on in the machine, you jiggle it, and then the machine is doing the same movement again and again and again until you count the strokes. and then you compare what is the damage of those rocks on the different raw material. You quantify it in order to get, as you can see over here, to get what was the role of the raw material properties in the decision making. This is where we are in this respect, and we are in the beginning of a long road to understand this kind of question. The second question we are dealing with is the paleo environment. And in this sense, we have a huge group, and we have tails that continue with us from the TSN to the next project. We have Jenny and we have Sebastian, and it's a really big team. But I will just focus here on the work of our student Dominic Rogal, that will be, as I said, it's really a unique opportunity to invest in the basic things. So we are trying to do an ecological survey around the site that we are working. It will be 3 sites. It's Ararat, Kalavan, and Hov Cave, and they are all in different elevation, 1,000, 1,600, and 2,000. And we will collect their rodents and herpetofauna, and we will do a DNA on those specimens that we will catch. And this will create the base for the biodiversity today. And we hope to have also, from that, we would like to understand the ecological niches of today. We will go to the same areas and we will try to collect pellets, what the owls are spitting of modern owls, in order to understand what is the prey behavior and how it's affect our reconstruction. This is what we have in the site. And in a way, this will be the steps in order to get to the situation where we actually can study in depth the ecological niches in the past. As I said, it's a big team that help us to work on this from the Institute of Biology in Yerevan, and there is a big team that making this effort. As I said, the same will be done with modern DNA on those rodents and herpetofauna in order to get to the past biodiversity and then reconstruct the niches of ecological niches. And this will be done by Selina Brace from the Natural History Museum. And of course, our goal is to get to the effect of the climate and the anthropogenic forcing, how they affect the biodiversity. This work was done by Sebastian Joannin and Odile Perron. And the idea is that we will have all the different lines of evidence from the paleo environment. We would like to create an ecological niche modeling that will downscale the big picture into a smaller units that will help us to get closer to the decision-making of a hunter-gatherer. And in this figure below, Seb, you can always correct me. You can see the sequence of a paper that I didn't finish, Seb, sorry, that combines the previous work by Montoya et al. In Kalavan 1 and our current project in Kalavan 6. This is a sequence that goes from the last glacial maximum till the Holocene, and Odile and Seb more or less enable us to characterize what are the changes in the environmental factors between the different periods that can help us to get to the question why people didn't live in Armenia during the last glacial maximum or the peak of the last glacial maximum. And to give you the spoiler before the paper is that most likely it's related to the temperature, the really decrease of temperatures during the LGM. So taking all this together, as I said, it's instead of conclusion, it's more a hope where we want to be. We would like to get to the multiple lines of evidence related to population dynamics, both of humans or the cultural material at least, through time and space, as well as the fauna. We would like to create databases of the flora, fauna, isotopic studies, all of those things that are foundations in order to get to better reconstruction of the past. we would like to juxtapose the different lines of evidence in order to get a refined understanding of the decision making. Thank you, Seb. Of the decision making of hunter-gatherer, where they are going, in which season, and through time, why they are there and why they are chosen or not chosen or forced to leave the area. And just to finish up with the two advertisements, we are going to the field in 24-25 of June this year to Ararat Cave. I promise you this will be your landscape every morning if you are going to the excavation. And we are searching for more volunteers. We have already 4, but we're searching for 4 more lucky people. And the second advertisement that I would like to share with you, that we are opening in our Institute of Archaeology in the Department of Prehistory. We are opening an MA in English. So everyone that really would like an adventure in the Levant is ready to come. We are ready to embrace. We have field projects, as you can see, everywhere. And not me, we are on the shoulders of giants. It's a wonderful institute to work with and to study. And we are will be happy to have more international students. Already we have a lot, and we would like to continue this wonderful tradition. This is it. This is from my side. Thank you very much for listening. And I hope that you have a lot of questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this really thrilling presentation, really captivating. I think you will have questions from, maybe before questions, sorry. Is there someone able to do the translation in Armenian, maybe for 10 minutes? A small abstract of your...
Oh, you are part of the deal.
Yeah. Is there anyone from your team maybe, or just maybe...
Arturjan is the brother from another mother. Arturjan.
Great.
I volunteered you, Arturjan.
Thank you, Artur.
Hello, everyone. Barev. So I must make a translation in Armenian, no? Summarize. Okay. Նախագիծը, որը Արիկը ներկայացրեց, նա ուսումնասիրում ենք, լսում եք, չէ՞, հայեր, մենք մեր թիմը ուսումնասիրում է Հայաստանի վաղ շրջանը, ուրեմն առաջին մասից ուրեմն առաջին հերթին Կալավան մենք շարունակեցինք Կալավան 2 բացօթյա հնավայրի պեղումները, հնավայրը հայտնաբերվել էր հայ-ֆրանսիական արշավախմբի կողմից եւ ուսումնասիրվել էր մինչեւ 2007 թվականը, մենք ուսումնասիրությունը սկսեցինք Կալավան 2 հնավայրի ու ապագայում այդ հիմնականում արշավախմբի այն ինչ որ Արիկը ներկայացրեց միջին պալեոլիթյան, այսպես ժամանակաշրջանին է վերաբերվում, մյուս հնավայրը, որի մասին այսպես այս նոր հնավայրը, որը հայտնաբերվեց արշավախմբի կողմից, դա Արարատ 1 քարայրն է, որը իր այսպես բարձրությամբ ավելի ցածր է գտնվում քան Կալավանը, օրինակ որ բանանենք, Կալավան 2-ը գտնվում 1600 մետրի վրա, իսկ Արարատ 1-ը տարապես 1000 մետրի վրա, նյութական մշակույթի առումով այս երկու շրջանները նման են, մենք գտնում ենք նույն տիպի գործիքներ, ուրեմն այսպես ինտերդիսցիպլինար ուսումնասիրություն է արվում, թե դատաները ստանալու, թե այդ բնաշխարհը վերականգնելու, թե այդ այսպես կոչված արարատյան պալեոլիճը վերականգնելու եւ նրա ափին նոր հնավայրեր ընտրելու այդ մասով արշավախումբը կազմված է երկու խմբի ենք բաժանվել մի մասը կենտրոնացել է պեղումներ անելու Արարատ 1 Քարայրում մյուս մասը սրվեյ անում, հա, հետախուզական աշխատանքներ է իրականացնում եւ փորձում են գտնել նոր հնավայրեր։ Այս տարի համավարակով պայմանավորված մենք նախանցյալ տարի չաշխատեցինք, նախորդ տարի կատարվել են զուտ հետախուզական աշխատանքներ եւ մի երկու այսպես փոսորակներ հետախուզական այս տարի նախատեսում ենք շարունակել աշխատանքները Արարատ 1-ում ու այարիկի ուսանողները արդեն ընտրել են իրենց թեմաները եւ իրենց բեժդիներն են անում այս նյութերի վրա մի խոսքով այսպես ծրագիրը մեծ ապագա ունի այսքանը դեցով
Thanks Artur.
So I will stop the recording now, I think.